The stars looked no different the day everything changed. From Earth's surface, it was just another clear night, moon over the Pacific, satellites tracing quiet arcs. But 42,000 kilometers above, parked discreetly at Lagrange Point 1, the Galactic Concorde's envoy ship had arrived. They called themselves the Consensus of Enlightened Species, a governing body comprising over 200 intelligent civilizations, supposedly bound by peace, diplomacy, and shared progress. They'd been watching humanity for decades, perhaps centuries, evaluating. And now the invitation had come. Earth was to be welcomed to the galactic stage. Sort of. Ambassador Elena Ruiz stood at the edge of the vast, translucent dais of Concorde Prime, an orbital platform the size of Manhattan, suspended by anti-grav fields over the planet Kepler-6, the Concorde's central political hub. Around her, beings of every imaginable shape conversed in low, melodious frequencies or neural link pulses. A massive spiral of species, all speaking over her, around her, but never to her. She adjusted the tailored blue trim of her Earth Diplomatic Corps uniform and took a slow breath. "Elena," whispered a soft voice in her neural translator. It was Colonel Malik Adebayo, standing a respectful few meters behind in his white-edged dress uniform. Broad-shouldered, flinty-eyed, ex-military, he'd served through the Pacific Unification Wars and wasn't prone to subtlety. "They've been ignoring us for 20 minutes, he muttered. "This is a waste of time." "They're assessing protocol adherence," Ruiz replied, forcing calm into her tone. "It's their custom." "Wait. Watch. Judge." Malik snorted. "Feels like condescension wrapped in courtesy." He wasn't wrong. Ruiz had read every file Earth's linguists and anthropologists had compiled on the Concorde. For all its boasts of peace and unity, it was less a federation and more a cultural oligarchy. The elder species dictated terms. The newcomers learned to obey or were politely ostracized. A high chime rang out, like a whale call processed through crystalline tones. A robed being glided toward them, tall and mantis-like, skin gleaming like wet obsidian. Its 3 eyes glowed faintly green. "I am Rilverek of the Xantari Concordant," it said, its words translated into elegant British-accented English. "I speak as first voice today." Ruiz stepped forward and offered a formal Terran bow. "Ambassador Elena Ruiz. Earth." Rilverek did not bow. "Welcome, Species 201. The Assessment Council has reviewed your cultural transmissions, diplomatic efforts, and planetary cohesion. You are granted observer status in the Concorde." "Observer." Adebayo murmured under his breath. Ruiz ignored him. "Thank you for your welcome. May I inquire what responsibilities and privileges accompany observer status?" Rilverek's eyes blinked in sequence. "Your species may attend open councils, submit questions, and receive limited access to non-restricted Concorde archives. Voting rights, technological exchange, and fleet integration are unavailable at your stage of maturation." "Maturation," Adebayo said, louder now. "We crossed the Kuiper Belt before most of your species cracked fire." Ruiz gave him a sharp glance. Rilverek inclined its narrow head. "Earth's recent unification and military expansions suggest potential instability. War, even one meant for unification, is troubling to us. You will understand in time." Ruiz's smile held the tension of someone clenching a blade behind her back. "Of course. We are eager to learn." The rest of the day blurred in bureaucratic theater. Ruiz was paraded through ceremonial domes and historical archives. Aliens offered stiff greetings. Her questions were often redirected to minor aides. Every moment felt curated, like she was walking through a museum rather than a living political body. It wasn't until the evening symposium that things took a turn. The symposium was a semi-formal gathering, a wine-and-cheese diplomatic session, except the wine was a glowing vapor and the cheese was something that writhed gently on skewers. Ruiz stood beside a holographic window, watching spiral freighters drift in orbit below. A gelatinous creature called Phase Tech, representing the Gractel polity, oozed beside her. "You humans," Phase Tech burbled, "are quite volatile, yes? So many wars. So many dead." Ruiz smiled politely. We've certainly had our share of struggles, yes. But that's also how we've grown.
Ah,
Growth through destruction. How quaint. Its tone dripped with mockery. Better than stagnation through cowardice, Adebayo muttered into his drink. Phase Tech twitched. Are you threatening me, human? Ruiz stepped forward. No one's threatening anyone. Colonel Adebayo was merely expressing our unique cultural values, passion and perseverance. Phase Tech bubbled in displeasure and slithered off. Adebayo exhaled. Tell me again why we're trying to join this circus. Ruiz leaned on the railing beside him. Because if we don't, they'll treat us like infants forever. We have to show them we're more than our past. They don't want to see that. They just want to feel superior. She didn't answer, because part of her agreed. Later, alone in her assigned quarters, Ruiz accessed a private link to Earth. Her screen flickered and resolved into the face of UN Secretary General Lavinia Cho. How's the view? Cho asked, face tight with restrained concern. Bureaucratic. Patronizing. Familiar. They gave us observer?
yes.
And made it clear where to behave, stay quiet, and act grateful. Cho sighed. We expected this. The question is, what now? Ruiz hesitated. We keep showing up. We outlast them. We prove them wrong, not by shouting, but by outthinking. Outlasting. And if that doesn't work? Ruiz looked toward the stars beyond the window. Then we remind them we didn't survive ice ages, empires, and extinction-level events to be dismissed by galactic bureaucrats with fancy robes. The chapter ends with a shift in tone. Somewhere deep in the Concord archives, an AI analyst flagged a minor report. The human envoy had accessed 24 outdated treaties in a few hours, cross-referenced them, and identified loopholes in Concord observer status rules. Humans were watching and learning. Faster than anyone expected. Chapter 1 wrap-up. Character development. Ruiz. Patient, diplomatic, but aware she's being patronized. Slowly beginning to question Concord's sincerity. Adebayo. Protective, skeptical, vocal, represents growing undercurrent of human defiance. Rilvarek. Arrogant and condescending, emblematic of entrenched alien elitism. Phase Tech. Comic relief and an example of species that view humanity through a lens of ridicule. Emotional/thematic beats. Awe and wonder at first contact. Frustration and subtle humiliation at being treated as inferior. Beginning of the HFY arc. Humans being underestimated. Slow realization. They don't respect us. Yet. World-building highlights. The galactic Concord is peaceful but rigid, old, and self-assured. Alien technology is advanced, but their thinking has stagnated. Humanity, though newer, adapts quickly, with a drive that unsettles the older species. Would you like me to continue with Chapter 2? Earth's inclusion in the Concord was supposed to mark the beginning of a new era. Instead, it became a masterclass in frustration. Ambassador Elena Ruiz paced through the white marble corridors of Concord Prime's diplomatic sector. The air smelled faintly of ozone and synth oil. Holographic vines decorated the ceiling, occasionally blooming in patterns meant to represent universal unity. She didn't feel united. She felt stonewalled. We've submitted 5 requests for technology sharing, she said, voice sharp. Each one denied. We've asked to speak at policy sessions. Ignored. How is this observer status anything but ceremonial theater? Her assistant, a young Nigerian cultural analyst named Tariq Owolabi, offered a polite shrug. They call it gradual integration. We call it benign obstruction. Ruiz stopped walking. And the Europa incident? Tariq's face darkened. Still nothing. The Europa attack. 3 weeks earlier, a human mining colony on Europa, Jupiter's frozen moon, had gone dark. Its last transmission had been a garbled SOS, a plasma burst cutting off comms mid-sentence. The Concord had jurisdiction over piracy enforcement. Earth had filed an emergency appeal for protection. The response? Due to scheduling and sectoral non-interference policies, deployment is not currently authorized. So Earth had acted on its own. Colonel Malik Adebayo had coordinated a rapid response Black Ops mission from the HFY Audacity, an experimental stealth corvette stationed in Saturn's rings. Within 16 hours, the colony was retaken, casualties minimized, and the attackers captured. All without Concord support. One attacker, a Varkoni mercenary, claimed they were paid to hit the colony. Not by pirates, but by Concord logistics contractors with ties to the Gractel. When Ruiz had demanded an investigation, Concord council members had deflected. That was a localized security incident, Rilvarek had said. Your response was effective, but overzealous. You acted outside Concord procedure. They were killing civilians, Ruiz had replied. And yet you responded with military force, Rilvarek had said. Violence, as we've warned, reflects poorly on your species. Ruiz remembered that moment like a stone pressed into her chest. Political friction and leaks. That afternoon, Ruiz met with Ambassador Alora of Velar, one of the few Concord representatives who didn't treat her like a child playing dress-up. The Velari were an avian species, tall, feathered, elegant, and surprisingly open-minded. Your military success on Europa is unsettling to the Council, Alora said over tea laced with neural clarity stimulants. We protected our people, Ruiz said. Yes. With unconventional, fast, and, to them, dangerous efficiency. Should we have waited for another council meeting while colonists were dying? No, Alora replied, her head crest rising slightly. But you must understand, most Concord species haven't fought real wars in centuries. They fear what they no longer comprehend. Ruiz leaned forward. Then they fear us. They fear what you might become. Colonel Adebayo's frustration. Back on the Earth diplomatic enclave, a secure satellite compound orbiting Kepler 6, Adebayo stared at tactical maps on his holoscreen. The Concord's anti-pirate fleets were passive patrols, slow, formulaic. He had access to more data than they realized. And it was damning. The Gractel are using Concord shipping lanes to funnel weapons to rogue states, he told Ruiz in a late-night strategy meeting. They know, she said grimly. They just won't admit it. They don't care, Adebayo said, his voice low and steady. Because it doesn't threaten them. Because they've decided your species is decorative, not dangerous. Ruiz stared at the silent galaxy map. If we move too soon, they'll brand us violent. If we don't move at all, they'll bury us in protocol. Adebayo's fingers tapped the table. Sometimes, the only thing that gets their attention is a punch to the mouth. Ruiz didn't disagree. That scared her more than anything. A tactical mind unleashed. Despite the official narrative, Earth's military had been preparing. Not for war, but for being outmaneuvered. They had developed a suite of asymmetric, adaptive warfare tactics that no other Concord species had conceived of. EMP bloomers, self-replicating electronic pollen that disrupted AI guidance systems. Hardlight decoy fleets, visually indistinct from real ships, but projected from stealth drones. Tactical translation corruption, linguistic virusware that caused alien command systems to misinterpret simple orders. Concord fleets were advanced, yes, but also static, built on centuries of peacekeeping assumptions. Earth strategists had trained in chaos. They weren't better, just different. And increasingly, that difference was looking like a threat. The Concord Summit flashpoint. A month after the Europa incident, Ruiz was summoned to speak at an emergency Concord Summit. For the first time, Earth had been given the floor. The room, amphitheater-shaped, with 360-degree seating and environmental zones for aquatic, gaseous, and solid life delegates, was eerily quiet. Ruiz stood in the center. Alone. 37 civilians died, she began. We asked for help. None came. We acted. We succeeded. And now we are told our success is the problem. Soft murmurs spread across the chamber. We are not perfect. We are not ancient. But we are here, now. We do not need to be coddled or corrected. We ask only for fairness. A Zalathai counselor, a gelatinous, six-eyed delegate, floated forward. Your kind solves problems through violence, it said. You must evolve. Ruiz didn't blink. We solve problems. Period. Sometimes violence is the cost of defense. Your moral high ground is paved with our dead. A sudden shift rippled through the chamber. Elora stepped forward. Ambassador Ruiz speaks truth. If we dismiss a new voice because it is loud, perhaps it is our ears that are at fault. The statement caused a minor stir, but Rilvarek soon reasserted the consensus. No further motions will be considered at this time. Earth's conduct remains under review. The hammer came down. The door slammed shut. The emotional breaking point. After the summit, Ruiz walked alone in the gardens of Concord Prime, staring up at the artificial sun. They've decided what we are, she whispered. Tark approached her quietly. The worst part is, they think they're being kind. Ruiz turned. This isn't kindness. It's control. Wrapped in etiquette. Dressed in delay. It's chains made from smiles. She paused. How many more times do we wait while our people bleed? Tark didn't answer. The quiet pivot. That night, Ruiz sent a single encrypted message back to Earth Command. Begin Protocol C. Passive only. Monitoring and simulation until further instruction. At the same time, Colonel Adebayo received a separate order. Assemble Ghost Fleet. Operation Firebreak is not approved, but it is prepared. He smiled grimly and locked his terminal. Chapter 2 Wrap-Up. Character Development. Ruiz transitions from pure diplomacy to a subtle readiness for resistance. Adebayo is increasingly justified in his caution, becoming an emotional and strategic anchor. Elora begins to emerge as an ally from within the Concord structure. The Concord, embodied by Rilvarek and others, is shown to be willfully stagnant, afraid of Earth's adaptability. Major conflicts. Europa's attack and the Concord's deliberate inaction. Earth's retaliatory success branded as aggression. Ruiz's summit speech being dismissed despite its moral clarity. Emotional/thematic beats. Deep frustration and growing disillusionment. The hypocrisy of peace that tolerates injustice. The emergence of resolve, a quiet but unmistakable pivot. World-building highlights. The idea of decorative membership in the Concord. Insight into Earth's adaptive, creative tactical doctrine. A clear contrast between Concord's dogmatic stagnation and human innovation. Would you like to proceed with Chapter 3, where the tension breaks and humanity begins to act decisively? It had been 3 months since the summit. 3 months since humanity had been forced into the role of observer, disregarded, belittled, treated as though their survival and ingenuity were mere curiosities to be examined by the older, wiser civilizations of the galactic Concord. But that era was about to end. Ambassador Elena Ruiz stood before a holographic map of the galaxy in her private command suite aboard the UN Starbase Odyssey, the ship now commanding Earth's covert military assets in the Keldan Expanse, just outside Concord borders. Her fingers traced the lines on the map, weaving together information in ways only humans seemed capable of. Coordinated military maneuvers, political instability, pirate territories, and, most troubling of all, a growing rift within the Concord itself. The buildup of tension. It was always the small things, the underlying details, that revealed the true state of affairs. The seemingly insignificant anomalies, a stolen communication frequency, a disappearance in an untracked system, the sharp reduction in diplomatic chatter from Concord envoys, the hidden whispers of alien factions meeting in darkened corridors. In the back channels, humans had always been good at finding the hidden undercurrents, at detecting patterns others missed. And these patterns? They pointed to one thing. The Concord was splintering. The Gractel were quietly expanding their reach in a way that was no longer covert. The Volari had begun to openly criticize Concord's inability to prevent piracy. And worst of all, the Xantari, Rilveric species, had begun to claim more and more space as part of the core sector with little explanation. Their ships no longer traveled under the banner of peace, but under the guise of defense and stability. In essence, the Concord was losing control, and they feared humanity's unpredictability was the catalyst. The warning had come 2 weeks ago. Humanity has proven itself dangerous. The methods of the past no longer suffice. Their instability could cause irreversible harm to the galaxy's fragile peace. Ruiz's response had been clear. So be it. A cold, calculated decision. Ruiz had been preparing for this moment in silence. Behind the polished image of diplomatic grace, she had been working tirelessly with the Earth Command and allied sectors to create a counterresponse to the growing pressure from the Concord. She knew that if Earth's leadership didn't act soon, they'd be left in the same position forever, helpless and irrelevant. But Ruiz knew something else, too. Humans didn't have the luxury of complacency. To survive in the vastness of the galaxy, humanity had to force itself into the future, whether the Concord accepted it or not. You really think this will work? Colonel Malik Adebayo asked as he leaned against the wall in Ruiz's strategy room, his voice laced with skepticism. Ruiz turned toward him. I don't think we have any other option. It's not about whether it'll work. It's about sending the message. Adebayo scoffed. You're telling me we're going to threaten a galactic alliance, and that's a message? Yes, Ruiz said simply. We're going to remind them that we are not afraid. And if they want to see how far we're willing to go, they'll find out soon enough. The human response. The first move was subtle. A small fleet of Earth ships, comprising stealth corvettes and trade frigates, deployed into uncharted space, slipping past Concord patrols under the cover of disruptive cloak technology. The ships were armed, but their missions were not to attack, merely to infiltrate and gather intel on the Gractel's expansion. What followed was a barrage of data, encrypted, highly sensitive, and devastating. The Gractel were not just expanding their influence through military means, they were conducting black market arms deals across the entire Keldan expanse, funneling weaponry to factions known to be hostile to Concord's authority. But even worse was the fact that key members of the Concord's ruling council were directly involved in the operation. Ruiz knew the implications of the data. This wasn't just a violation of human interests. It was a betrayal of the Concord itself. Send it to every Concord delegate. All of them, Ruiz ordered, voice firm. If they want to accuse us of instability, they'll have to deal with this. The confrontation at Concord Central. The response from the Concord was immediate. Rilveric summoned Ruiz to an emergency council session at Concord Central. The council was an imposing structure, made of sleek, transparent materials that allowed the stars to pierce through from every angle. It felt less like a room for diplomacy and more like a gilded cage designed to keep those within it on their best behavior. Ruiz entered with her usual composure, though inside, her pulse quickened. This was it. The point of no return. Rilveric stood at the head of the council table, flanked by other high-ranking delegates. The Xantari's alien eyes seemed to bore into her. You've made a grave mistake, Ambassador, Rilveric began. His voice was cold, but there was a tremor to it. Your actions have jeopardized the stability of the entire Concord. I disagree, Ruiz said, her voice unwavering. The actions of certain members of the Concord have already destabilized everything. The Gractel aren't just threatening us, they're threatening you. Enough, human, a Gractel delegate bellowed, his gelatinous form rippling with indignation. You have no right. Ruiz cut him off. I have every right. If we are going to be part of this galactic community, we will hold everyone accountable. Your corruption and your negligence will not go unnoticed. The room fell into a tense silence. The ripple effects of Ruiz's words were palpable. You're making a mistake, Rilveric hissed. Do not test us, human. We are not the species you can ignore forever. Ruiz took a step forward, locking eyes with him. Then stop trying to control us. If you truly believe in peace and unity, you'll stand with us, not against us. The Xantari ambassador's expression soured. We will do no such thing. Your species is volatile. Ruiz's voice hardened. No. You think we are unpredictable, but that's what makes us dangerous. And you will never forget the moment you finally realized that. The spark of rebellion. As the confrontation escalated, something remarkable happened. A disruptive signal, a rogue transmission, began to flood the council chamber. The lights flickered. A strange hum filled the air. The human ships had triggered a secondary part of their plan. In a coordinated strike, Earth's stealth corvettes sent disruptive EMP pulses across Concord communications networks, scrambling their fleet's internal systems and creating widespread chaos. Ships in orbit turned in circles, unable to respond to commands. The chamber was plunged into uncertainty. Ruiz's calm voice echoed through the chaos. We're not just waiting to be a part of your society anymore. We are taking our place. You either accept that or you'll be left behind. The message was clear. The decision. Rilvarek stood still, visibly shaken, as his people scrambled to regain control. In that moment, Ruiz knew the Concord was no longer in control of its own narrative. They had underestimated humanity. Adebayo's voice crackled over the comms, distorted by interference, but still sharp. Ambassador, we've deployed Phase 2. They're going to have to choose soon. Good, Ruiz said softly, her voice tinged with something deeper than anger, something like resolve. Tell command to prepare for whatever comes next. For the first time since they'd arrived in the Concord, Ruiz felt the weight of humanity's potential shift under her feet. The galaxy had underestimated them for too long. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about defining the future. Chapter 3 Wrap-Up. Character Development. Ruiz steps into a leadership role defined by calculation, resolve, and risk. Her diplomatic patience has evaporated, replaced by cold decisiveness. Adebayo embraces the role of military tactician, unflinching in the face of escalating tensions. The Concord's image of invincibility is cracked, their complacency shattered. Major conflicts. The confrontation between Ruiz and the Concord Council, where humanity's role in galactic politics is forcefully asserted. The empire-building corruption of the Gractel and their dark dealings exposed. The technological gamble of Earth's covert strike on Concord's fleets, testing humanity's resolve. Emotional/thematic beats. The end of submission. Humanity will not be a passive observer. The beginning of a new narrative, one that will reshape galactic power structures. The tension between unity and independence. Humanity will no longer just comply with alien expectations. World-building highlights. A more complex picture of the Concord, a fractured, power-hungry organization that hides its flaws behind a facade of peace. Earth's rapid technological advancements and adaptability continue to unsettle the Concord. Would you like me to proceed with Chapter 4, where the final confrontation and resolution come into play? The galaxy was quiet. Too quiet. Even from Earth's newly commissioned flagship, the UN Starship Titan, the silence of the vast expanse outside felt like an oppressive weight. It had been over a week since humanity's bold action, since they had delivered their message to the Concord with the EMP strikes that threw their entire fleet into chaos. The political backlash was expected, but the complete absence of a response was not. Elena Ruiz stood at the center of the command deck, her eyes staring out at the stars. The Titan, a vessel of unparalleled engineering, was now Earth's final word in this escalating conflict. Everything had been carefully planned, the calculations, the timing, the risks. Yet even now, with the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not yet. Any response from Concord yet? She asked, breaking the stillness. No, Ambassador. Tarek Owolabi answered, his voice tight. The Concord Council hasn't made a public move. There's nothing but radio silence. They're waiting. Adebayo stepped forward, his expression grim. They're going to come for us soon. They have no choice. If they allow this to go unchecked, they'll lose face in front of every other species. It's only a matter of time before they act. Ruiz nodded slowly, but her face betrayed no sign of fear. Let them wait. The calm before the storm. It had been clear from the moment they'd initiated Phase 2, an unprecedented, coordinated strike that had effectively crippled Concord's military communication, that the Concord would not take this lying down. Their internal chaos had only made matters worse. Without their fleets to enforce their will, alien factions within the Concord had begun to question their leader's authority. Some began to shift their support to Earth. Should we press the attack? Adebayo asked. His words were tempered by caution, but Ruiz saw the eagerness in his eyes. Humanity had been pushed to the edge for far too long.
No.
We wait, Ruiz replied, her voice steel. We've shown them we're not to be ignored. Now we force them to decide. The first move. It wasn't long before their answer came. The Gractel, long suspected of instigating the tensions that had brought humanity to this point, made their move. A convoy of heavily armed Gractel warships appeared on the edge of Earth's space zone, bypassing the Concord's traditional route for diplomatic vessels. Their intention was clear: retaliation. The Gractel were aggressive and had grown bolder in recent months. But they underestimated humanity's resourcefulness. The attack was expected, but it would not come without consequences. Ruiz sat in the war room, her face illuminated by the holographic display of the approaching Gractel fleet. They're positioning themselves to cut us off from our allies, Adebayo said, pointing to the strategic lines on the map. They're trying to isolate us and pressure us into submission. Let them try, Ruiz replied coolly. They've never faced humanity's resolve before. The Titan's captain, Caitlin Scott, a seasoned veteran of the Mars Defense Force, spoke up. I recommend engaging their vanguard immediately. We can overwhelm their front line before they regroup. Ruiz hesitated. She'd considered this. But sending Earth's finest into a head-to-head conflict would only confirm the Gractel's claim of human aggression. No, they needed to show that humanity was still in control, that they weren't simply reacting to every provocation. Not yet, Ruiz said, her voice laced with authority. Activate our decoy fleet. The Titan's AI systems flared to life, sending an array of holographic vessels out into space, mimicking the appearance of Earth's military ships. The Gractel, unfamiliar with the intricacies of human technological warfare, saw this as an opportunity. They launched their own first strike, firing on what they believed to be real Earth ships. As the Gractel fleet closed in, a wave of EMP pulses tore through their command systems, scrambling their navigation and targeting protocols. The decoy ships disintegrated into thin air, leaving the Gractel fleet in chaos as their internal systems malfunctioned. At the same time, the real fleet, positioned just beyond their line of sight, launched a series of tactical missiles designed to disable their propulsion systems, sending the Gractel warships into a slow drift. The last stand. Back at Concord Central, Rilvarek was finally forced to confront the reality of the situation. The Concord had lost control of the narrative. Earth had acted decisively, and now the other species, unsure of the Gractel's next moves, were beginning to question their allegiance. In a rare move, Rilvarek requested a face-to-face meeting with Ruiz. The tension in the air was palpable as Ruiz sat across from the Zantari counselor in a neutral location, a holographic table between them. You've made your point, Rilvarek said, his tone icy, but with a touch of reluctant respect. But at what cost? Your attack on the Gractel was calculated, yes. But it has shattered what little trust remained between us. Ruiz didn't flinch. What trust? You never trusted us in the first place. That's a harsh accusation.
No.
It's the truth. You saw humanity as a threat long before we ever acted. But you know what's more dangerous than that? Ignoring us. Rilvarek's gaze hardened. You misunderstand. The Concord does not fear humanity. We fear what you could become if left unchecked. Ruiz's expression was unyielding. What we could become is already written. You just refuse to see it. Humanity is not a threat because of our weapons or our tactics. We are a threat because we never stop evolving. While you hoard your knowledge, your peace, we adapt. And you will never keep up. The turning point. The final confrontation occurred in the heart of the Keldon Expanse, where humanity's ingenuity and grit had already left a permanent scar on Concord's psyche. The Gractel fleet had retreated after their surprise defeat, but they were not the real target. Concord's leadership had proven to be the true obstacle, and if humanity was ever going to carve out its own future, it had to face them head-on. In a final, desperate attempt to assert their dominance, the Concorde sent a joint fleet to intercept humanity's forces. Their orders were clear: neutralize Earth's influence, or risk destabilizing the entire region. Ruiz stood at the helm of the Titan as the fleet approached. "I need you to understand something, Rilvarek," Ruiz said softly, her voice almost lost in the hum of the ship's engines. "We aren't just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every species who's been held back by the Concorde's bureaucratic stranglehold." Adebayo stood beside her, fingers tapping rhythmically on the console. "We've spent too long on the sidelines. Now we're in the game." As the Concorde's flagship appeared on the holographic map, Ruiz made her decision. She sent one simple order: initiate Phase 3. A blinding shockwave erupted from the Titan's core, cascading outward to disrupt the Concorde's fleet. It wasn't just an EMP strike, it was a quantum displacement wave that tore apart Concorde's network of communication and navigational systems. The Concorde's fleet faltered. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to innovate at a pace they could no longer match. The final declaration. The communication channels opened. Ruiz stood once more before the entire galaxy, broadcasted live across every planet and species in the Concorde. "Let this be the moment the universe remembers," Ruiz said, her voice clear and commanding. "Humanity will no longer be an observer. We will not be pacified. We are here, and we will shape the future." The Council remained silent, but the message was unmistakable. Humanity's patience had finally snapped, and no species, no matter how ancient or powerful, would ever forget the moment humanity decided to claim its place in the stars. Chapter 4 Wrap-Up. Character Development. Ruiz evolves into a leader capable of both strategic brilliance and emotional resilience. Adebayo becomes more than a soldier. He's a tactician, a voice of reason in the storm. Rilvarek, once the powerful figurehead of the Concorde, is revealed to be vulnerable in the face of humanity's relentless adaptability. Major conflicts. The Gractel retaliation, which serves as the trigger for humanity's decisive counteraction. The Concorde's refusal to acknowledge humanity's potential and the eventual breakdown of their ability to control Earth's narrative. Humanity's final statement. They were never the underdogs, merely waiting for their time. Emotional/thematic beats. The theme of evolution versus stagnation is fully realized, with humanity asserting their place in a universe that thought it had already seen everything. The triumph of resilience and ingenuity over tradition and fear. World-building highlights. Humanity's technological ingenuity, the use of EMP pulses and quantum displacement as game-changing tactics. The fracturing of the Concorde, as more species begin to question its outdated protocols. With that, humanity's journey of growth and survival culminates in a decisive, HFY-style victory. The story concludes, but the true implications of humanity's rise will ripple through the galaxy for centuries to come. Would you like to discuss any changes or expand on certain aspects further?